Welcome, dearly beloved anointed ones. When the government watches you more than your own family, it's not paranoia, it's paperwork waiting to explode. Chosen ones, let that sink in for a moment. Why would federal eyes track your steps, monitor your phone calls, and measure your silence like it's stock value? It's because what's tied to your name isn't just money, it's a trigger. A trigger that, once pulled, unleashes a flood of wealth, land, rights, and authority that were buried in your bloodline long before you even knew what you carried. Here's a fact for you. The US government spends billions annually on protective surveillance programs, not for celebrities, not for social media influencers, but for individuals connected to sensitive assets and estates. Translation? If you're on their radar, it's because your name holds the keys to more than a vault. It holds the keys to reshaping power itself. Now let's be honest, if you've ever felt followed, but not by people you can see, it's because you're not paranoid, you're valuable. And the funniest part, some of the very same people who laughed at you, mocked you, and counted you out are now completely unaware that satellites, agents, and hidden files are literally revolving around your life, like you're the main character in a government-backed thriller. Talk about plot twist of the century. Stay locked in, because what I'm about to reveal isn't the fairy tale of inheritance. It's the raw, unfiltered truth about why your life has been under heavy protective surveillance and why your very existence has already shaken the foundations of systems that swore you'd never rise. This is bigger than money. It's about destiny written in ink that cannot be erased, and you, chosen one, are the headline they cannot silence. Number one, they know your bloodline holds more than paper wealth. They know your bloodline holds more than paper wealth. This is the part that most people will never understand because they've been trained to think of inheritance as only money in a bank, a deed to a house, or some dusty jewelry locked away in a safe. But your situation isn't just about that, it goes deeper. What you're tied to carries weight far beyond physical possessions. It's legacy, land, rights, and authority. It's influence that stretches across generations, contracts that were signed long before you were born, and entitlements that cannot simply be erased. And that's why your name has been flagged, traced, and recorded at higher levels than you could ever imagine. Authorities know that your inheritance represents more than private ownership. It represents a shift in power. We're talking about ancestral agreements, land tied to resource rights, or estates connected to political histories. When wealth of this kind changes hands, it doesn't just change one life. It shakes systems. That's why they're watching. They're not protecting a person who is lucky to receive money. They're guarding a transition of influence that could unravel certain hidden monopolies and expose how many families, governments, or institutions have benefited from keeping you in the dark all this time. And here's the brutally honest truth. Some of what you're about to inherit doesn't even belong in the same category as money. It's spiritual authority tied to your bloodline. It's the kind of authority that can't be bought, traded, or negotiated. Federal surveillance isn't just about physical protection, it's also about managing how and when this inheritance lands, because its impact can't be confined to your personal bank account. It will ripple into politics, business, religion, and even international relations. That's why they've got their eyes glued on you. What makes it even more intense is that this wealth isn't just material, it's evidence. Evidence of promises broken, wealth stolen, and names erased. You are walking proof that not everything can be buried, and the moment your inheritance surfaces, so do the stories and records attached to it. That's why you're under watch, because you don't just inherit money, you inherit power. And power is always a national security concern, whether people want to admit it or not. You've been underestimated your entire life, but the truth is, your bloodline is too loaded to ignore, and the system knows it. That's why their eyes are on you, always. Number two, protection isn't about you being fragile, it's about them being exposed. Protection isn't about you being fragile, it's about them being exposed. This is where most people misunderstand the situation. From the outside, it may look like you're being shielded because you can't handle the threats around you. But the truth is, the real danger doesn't come from you being harmed. It comes from what would unravel if something happened to you. The surveillance over your life is less about guarding your body and more about safeguarding the files, contracts, and secrets that are tied to your inheritance. You are the access point. The moment your existence is compromised, doors swing open that cannot be closed again. Authorities know this. They know that if anything happens to you, a flood of questions will rise to the surface. Questions about where the wealth is, who tried to block it, what manipulation was done, and who stands to lose when the truth finally comes out. If you were removed, the cover-ups wouldn't hold anymore. The story would spill out, and the very people who once mocked you, ignored you, or tried to erase you would suddenly be dragged into light. Protecting you is less about kindness and more about control, keeping the narrative intact until the right time. You are a liability to the system in the best way possible. If they leave you unguarded, enemies will move, and once they move, trails of corruption become too obvious to clean up. The people who worked hard to keep you out of your own inheritance can't afford that level of exposure. So ironically, the safest place for them is making sure you stay alive and untouched. That way they can keep the chaos under wraps a little longer. And this is where the irony burns the deepest. For so long, they wanted you to look powerless, but now your very presence dictates the movements of powerful people. You're being monitored not because you're weak, but because the system is weak without you. If you were to fall, they fall with you, and they can't risk that. Your survival protects their reputation, their influence, and their carefully built empires. The truth is, the protective surveillance over your life is less about protecting you from enemies. It's about protecting them from being exposed as the enemies all along. Number 3. You became a walking vault of secrets. You became a walking vault of secrets. That's the part that shocks people because they think your inheritance is just a matter of money or property. What they don't realize is that what's tied to your name is a collection of information, records, and proof that hold more weight than any pile of cash. You carry inside your inheritance the evidence of wrongdoings, the names of those who conspired, the files that trace stolen assets, and the documents that could expose years of manipulation. And because all of that is tied to you, your very existence is like a locked vault that the world is waiting to see opened. This is why you are under surveillance. You don't even have to say anything out loud. Your bloodline already tells the story. The inheritance itself acts like a key, and once it's in your possession, those hidden files automatically become unlocked. That's why you're monitored, not just for safety, but because you are the living link between the past and the exposure of truth. Authorities know that your enemies don't just fear you getting rich, they fear the undeniable evidence that comes with your elevation. And here's where it gets even more serious. This kind of information can't be destroyed because it's woven into legal contracts, archived documents, and ancestral claims. Your inheritance carries the receipts of corruption. Once you step into ownership, those receipts become public whether you choose to wave them around or not. That's why you are guarded so heavily, because what you carry is not only valuable, it's incriminating. This is also why enemies tried so hard to cut you off or erase your existence. They weren't just after money, they were trying to silence history. They wanted to bury the vault by burying you. But what they underestimated is that the system itself knows the weight of what you carry, and so even those in power can't afford to let you be erased. Protecting you has become their only option, not because they love you, but because without you, everything hidden bursts into light too soon. You're not just someone receiving an inheritance, you're the gatekeeper of untold truths. That's why eyes are on you. That's why every move is watched. Because once your vault opens, nothing and no one tied to it will ever be the same again. Number 4. Your silence has been louder than leaks. Your silence has been louder than leaks. That's the paradox that makes your situation so unsettling to those in power. You haven't stood on a stage, you haven't written a public letter, and you haven't gone on record revealing what's been buried in your inheritance. Yet the silence itself is deafening because it represents a storm waiting to break. They already know you carry knowledge, access, and rights that could flip entire narratives upside down, and the fact that you've chosen not to speak only makes them more nervous. Authorities understand something most people overlook. Once someone leaks information, it can be contained, it can be dismissed, denied, or spun as conspiracy. But when someone like you stays quiet, the tension grows because no one knows when, how, or if you'll finally let the truth out. Silence becomes a ticking clock, and every second you refuse to speak creates more pressure in rooms you'll never see. They treat you like a whistleblower, not because of what you've said, but because of what they know you could say at any given moment. That's why the surveillance is unrelenting. Your silence is not emptiness, it's potential. Potential is more dangerous than exposure because potential keeps the system off balance. They can't predict you, and unpredictability is the greatest threat to control. They would prefer if you spoke recklessly because then they could package it, ridicule it, or bury it. But since you've held your peace, they're forced to watch you closely, waiting for the day you decide to break it. And here's the irony. People around you may think your silence means you're powerless, but behind the scenes, it's the very reason you're monitored like a high-level operative. They know your voice could dismantle stories, reputations, and even institutions. They know you could validate the whispers others have tried to ignore. By saying nothing, you've managed to keep everyone on edge. That's why your silence has become louder than leaks. Leaks make noise for a moment. Silence builds suspense forever. And in your case, it's not just suspense, it's control. Your restraint has put you in a position where even your quiet presence demands attention. They can't ignore you, they can't erase you, and they can't predict you. And that's exactly why they keep their eyes locked on you. Number 5, they fear the ripple effect, not just the transfer. They fear the ripple effect, not just the transfer. The truth is, the money or property tied to your inheritance is only the surface layer of the story. What really shakes the system is what happens after you receive it. Wealth in the hands of someone ordinary might stop at personal gain, but in your hands, it becomes generational transformation. It becomes a tool that empowers others, disrupts cycles of poverty, and funds movements that shift the balance of power. That ripple effect is what terrifies them the most, because they can't contain it once it begins. Governments, institutions, and even family members who try to shut you out understand this clearly. They know you won't hoard your inheritance just to flaunt it. You'll build with it. You'll start businesses that cut through monopolies. You'll invest in people who were once overlooked, and you'll fund visions that were never supposed to exist outside of their control. They know you'll redistribute power by where you choose to place your resources, and that's something surveillance can't predict or prevent. The protective surveillance around you is heavy because your wealth represents more than luxury. It represents disruption. It represents the dismantling of old systems that survive by keeping people like you suppressed. With resources in your hands, you no longer need permission, connections, or validation from the very structures that tried to erase you. You become self-sustaining, and worse for them, you make others self-sustaining too. That ripple spreads faster than any system can regulate. And here's the raw truth. What they really fear is influence. Influence backed by money is unstoppable. Influence used for empowerment instead of exploitation is uncontrollable. They can watch you. They can monitor your every move, but once the transfer is complete, every choice you make echoes through communities, economies, and generations. That's why the protection feels invisible yet suffocating. It's their way of slowing down an outcome they know they can't prevent. The inheritance itself may be a single event, but the ripple effect is ongoing. They know once the first drop lands, the waves will carry far beyond you. And that's the real threat. Your inheritance isn't just wealth, it's a revolution in motion. Number 6, you're watched because others already tried and failed. You're watched because others already tried and failed. This is the part that most people around you will never know, but attempts to block or steal what's rightfully yours have already been made long before now. Papers have been tampered with, signatures forged, accounts redirected, and even identities manipulated, all in the hope that you'd never receive what belongs to you. The problem for your enemies is that every attempt left a mark. Every false move, every forged document, every secret meeting created a trail that couldn't be completely erased. And once that trail was noticed, it triggered a level of oversight far higher than anything your enemies ever imagined. The surveillance around you isn't just preventative, it's reactive. It's a direct response to the failures of those who tried to hijack your inheritance and got caught in the process. The higher powers watching you now aren't guessing about threats. They have documented proof that attempts have already been made. They know the names, the dates, and the methods. That's why they can't afford to leave you unguarded. Too much has already happened, and the risks of leaving you exposed are too great. This is also why your life feels like it's under a microscope. Once people tamper with legal and financial systems at the level your inheritance touches, the matter is no longer just family business. It becomes federal, and in some cases international. Surveillance becomes the only way to make sure that history doesn't repeat itself, and that those who tried before don't get another chance. The irony is that the enemies who thought they were clever in attempting to steal from you are the very reason you're now being watched so heavily. Their greed activated the protection around you. And here's where the story gets even sharper. The fact that you're under watch is proof that you've already won battles you didn't even know were being fought on your behalf. You weren't there in the boardrooms, you weren't in the forged signatures, you weren't in the whispered plans, but your name was. And despite everything, you're still standing and your inheritance is still on its way. That's why you're monitored now, because the system already knows your enemies failed before, and they can't let them get another chance to try again. Number 7. You are protected because you are irreplaceable. You are protected because you are irreplaceable. This isn't flattery, it's legal reality. Unlike some inheritances that can be rerouted to the next of kin or absorbed into a system if someone disappears, your role is unique. Your name, your identity, and your existence are the only keys that unlock this chain of ownership. If you were removed, everything tied to you would collapse into a legal storm so messy that courts, governments, and powerful families would be battling for years with no resolution in sight. That makes you too valuable to simply erase. The people watching you know this. They understand that your position is not transferable, not negotiable, and not replaceable. There isn't a backup heir lined up to quietly take your place. There isn't a substitute who can step in with the same authority. The inheritance is coded to you, tied to your name and bloodline in a way that cannot be duplicated. That's why no matter how much your enemies may hate you, they can't just remove you. Doing so doesn't solve the problem. It creates an even bigger one that they can't control. This is where the surveillance becomes critical. Since they can't risk losing you, they have to keep you close enough to protect, but distant enough to manage. They need to make sure you stay alive, intact, and in position for the transfer, even if that means monitoring your every move. Your very survival ensures the smooth continuation of processes that have been in motion for decades, maybe even centuries. Without you, everything stalls. And that's something too costly for the system to gamble with. The irony is sharp. For years, you may have been treated as if you didn't matter, overlooked or even ridiculed, but behind the scenes, you are the most watched person in the entire equation. Your existence holds together the entire chain. That's why you're irreplaceable. They can forge documents, silence witnesses, and manipulate systems, but they cannot replicate you. And because of that, you are both untouchable by force and priceless to guard. This truth flips the narrative completely. You are not being protected because of weakness. You are being protected because without you, everything unravels. You are the anchor, the key, and the unavoidable center of gravity in a story much bigger than yourself. That's why their eyes will never leave you. Number 8, the protection is double-edged. They guard and restrict. The protection is double-edged. They guard and restrict. This is one of the hardest truths to accept, because it exposes the complexity of your situation. On one hand, you are under surveillance because you're valuable, too important to be left exposed to threats. On the other hand, that same surveillance isn't just about keeping you safe, it's about controlling the pace of your rise. They want you alive, but they don't necessarily want you free. Those who watch over you have a dual agenda. Yes, they'll step in to make sure no one harms you, but they're also tracking your moves with precision. They measure who you speak with, what you plan, where you go, and how far you're willing to push boundaries. Their goal is to ensure that you don't activate your inheritance and the influence it brings before they've decided the world is ready for it. In their eyes, your timing matters as much as your safety, and that's why you feel the weight of restriction even in moments that should feel liberating. This is why opportunities sometimes appear delayed or blocked in mysterious ways. What feels like unnecessary resistance in your life is often the system slowing you down. It's not that you aren't capable of stepping into your power sooner. It's that they've calculated the risk of what happens if you do. Your empowerment at the wrong time could destabilize too much too fast. The surveillance is designed not only to shield you, but to cage you until they believe the stage is prepared. And here lies the irony. You're protected because they fear losing you, but you're restricted because they fear unleashing you. They want your existence preserved, but your impact postponed. They know your inheritance isn't just wealth, it's influence, transformation, and authority. That kind of power in the wrong season, according to them, is dangerous, so they guard you in the same breath that they delay you. This double-edged protection is the silent struggle you live under. You're not merely watched, you're managed. Your very life has become a balancing act between their fear of your destruction and their fear of your acceleration. And that's why you feel both safe and trapped at the same time. Number 9, your inheritance is tied to global networks. Your inheritance is tied to global networks. This is what elevates your situation far beyond the ordinary idea of someone receiving wealth from a relative. It's not just an estate sitting in one city or an account waiting quietly in a local bank. What's tied to your name stretches across borders, involving international dealings, offshore accounts, shadow trusts, and long-standing agreements that cross into multiple jurisdictions. That's why the protection around you doesn't just stop at local authorities. It has become a matter of federal and even international interest. The truth is, once inheritance reaches a certain scale, it's no longer just personal wealth, it becomes political. Money that crosses countries is monitored. Land tied to natural resources is regulated. Offshore trusts have ties to tax laws, governments, and global markets. When you inherit something connected to those channels, you aren't just a private citizen. You are suddenly a figure whose choices can affect economies, alliances, and power dynamics. That's why your surveillance feels so heavy. It isn't just about family drama anymore. It's about geopolitical consequences. This also explains why the forces protecting you may seem invisible but unrelenting. You're not just being shielded from relatives who might want to contest a will. You're being guarded against international fraudsters, corporate interests, and even government insiders who understand exactly how much power shifts once you take possession. The moment wealth of this kind is transferred, it doesn't stay still. It moves through systems, triggers audits, raises red flags, and redirects influence. Your life is being monitored because your inheritance has already been flagged as sensitive. And here's the deeper reality. The people who once dismissed you as irrelevant know nothing about this level of reach. They see money as a simple transaction, but your inheritance is a global web. It is tied into structures that were built decades ago, and when it passes into your hands, it alters the balance of those structures. That's why your protection is not optional. It's mandatory. Without you, billions could be rerouted, alliances could break, and international players could lose leverage. You may not have asked for it, but the moment your inheritance was identified as global, your life stopped being just yours. You became a priority on a scale few ever experience. And that's exactly why you are watched so closely, because your inheritance is not just wealth. It's a shift in the architecture of power. Number 10, you're under watch. Because you're a precedent setter. You're under watch because you're a precedent setter. This is bigger than your personal inheritance. It's about what your victory would represent. If you reclaim what's rightfully yours, you expose a crack in the system that was designed to look flawless. Your success proves that the walls built to keep families like yours out of their legacy aren't unbreakable. And once that happens, others will start asking questions, digging into their own histories, and demanding back what was taken from them too. That possibility terrifies those in power because it threatens to unleash a chain reaction they can't contain. Your situation isn't just a private matter, it's symbolic. You are a living case study that shows people the system isn't as airtight as it pretends to be. Governments and institutions thrive on perception. They need people to believe that if wealth was stolen generations ago, it's lost forever. They need people to believe that hidden trusts, land grabs, and manipulated wills are permanent. If you break that illusion, it's not just your life that changes. It's the mindset of countless others who realize they've been cheated out of their birthright. That's why your inheritance has become a national security concern. The surveillance around you is about control of the narrative. If they can monitor you, they can manage how your story unfolds. They want to prevent your victory from becoming too public, too inspiring, too disruptive. Because once others see that the system failed to block you, the dominoes begin to fall. People start digging into old documents, tracing family records, challenging corporations, and questioning governments. You aren't just receiving wealth, you're opening the door for others to demand their own. And here's what makes your situation so dangerous to them. You didn't come from their approved circles. You weren't supposed to figure it out. You weren't supposed to survive the pressure. You weren't supposed to endure the attacks. Yet here you are, still standing, still positioned for the transfer. That reality proves their system of exclusion isn't perfect. You are a precedent, and precedents set movements in motion. That's why you're watched so closely. Not because you're ordinary, but because your victory has the potential to rewrite what millions believe is possible. To them, you are not just an heir, you are a risk to the illusion of permanence they've built. And once you win, the whole world will know the game was never sealed shut. Number 11, the threats against you come from inside. The threats against you come from inside. This is the part most people overlook because they assume the danger to your inheritance would come from strangers, thieves, or opportunists on the outside. But the truth is, the ones who posed the greatest threat to you were the people who had direct access. Relatives with hidden agendas, lawyers with compromised loyalties, judges willing to bend rules, and financial gatekeepers who knew exactly how to manipulate the system. These weren't outsiders, they were the insiders trusted to safeguard legacies, yet they were the very ones plotting to erase yours. That's why the federal shield around you exists. It isn't random. You're not being protected from casual criminals who might stumble across your name. You're being guarded from highly connected individuals who have already tried to cut you out. These are people who knew where the documents were kept, who had access to signatures, who understood how to twist loopholes and bury evidence. They didn't have to guess. They had the blueprint of your bloodline's wealth and thought they could reroute it without anyone noticing. But what they underestimated is that their actions left a trail. Every forged document, every backdoor conversation, every sudden lost file became a red flag. By the time their attempt surfaced, the system had no choice but to step in. Now, the same institutions they once thought would cover for them have turned into watchdogs. And your protection is as much about keeping you safe as it is about keeping them boxed in. This is why your surveillance feels so heavy. It isn't just about shielding you, it's about documenting them. Every move you make is monitored, not just to ensure your safety, but to ensure their interference is impossible. The shield around you doubles as a cage around them, forcing them to watch while you move closer to what they swore you'd never have. The most striking irony in all of this is that your enemies thought they could erase you quietly. They counted on being insiders, assuming their positions would give them the power to succeed. Instead, those same positions have now marked them as the biggest threats, and the federal eye is watching them just as much as it watches you. Your protection is not only your shield, it's their prison. Number 12, surveillance confirms you already won. Surveillance confirms you already won. It may not feel like it because the heavy monitoring, the agents, the trackers, and the constant attention can seem restrictive or even oppressive. But the truth is, none of this exists for someone who is destined to lose. The very fact that the system is watching you so closely is a signal that the outcome has already been decided in your favor. It's just a matter of timing. The authorities aren't wasting resources on someone who isn't going to come out on top. Every camera, every signal intercept, every layer of observation is there because they know what you carry cannot be ignored or replaced. This is why your surveillance is not a punishment, it's proof. Every step, every call, every interaction is being monitored because they know your inheritance, your influence, and your rise cannot be stolen. They don't need to intervene to make sure you win. They need to monitor to ensure the process remains orderly, documented, and secure. The why now questions, the delays, the restrictions, all of it is timing. The system knows the victory is yours. It just hasn't been finalized yet. There's also a strategic reason for all this monitoring. They know that when someone like you takes what's rightfully theirs, it isn't a quiet event. The ripple effects are enormous. The surveillance ensures that when the transfer happens, there are no loopholes, no last-minute schemes, and no surprises that could jeopardize what's already decided. You are not being watched because of doubt. It's because your win is so significant that it must be managed meticulously. The irony is powerful. What looks like intrusion and control is actually validation. They wouldn't be watching if they didn't already know the score. Your life is under scrutiny, not because you're weak, but because you're unstoppable. The decision has been made and your victory is inevitable. The timing, the processes, the protections, all of it is simply a way to ensure that when it lands, nothing can reverse it. Every glance on you, every digital trail traced, every agent assigned is confirmation you have already won. The only variable left is the moment the world is allowed to witness it. And that moment is coming, whether anyone is ready or not. Number 13, you're not just protected, you're studied. You're not just protected, you're studied. The surveillance around you isn't purely about safety, it's about understanding the very person who will inherit this extraordinary power and wealth. Every move you make, every decision, every interaction is being observed and analyzed. They want to know how you think, who you trust, and how you will wield what's coming. Your inheritance is not just financial, it's influence, authority, and the ability to shift systems that affect thousands, maybe millions of people. The people watching you understand that your choices will have consequences far beyond your own life, and they need to anticipate how those choices will unfold. This isn't random observation, it's a detailed psychological assessment. They are mapping your character, your temperament, your instincts, and your patterns. They want to know if you'll act boldly, if you'll protect your allies, or if you'll be manipulated by those who previously tried to deceive you. Your ability to lead, make strategic decisions, and influence outcomes is being measured because the inheritance isn't just a transfer of wealth. It's a transfer of power that could affect businesses, governments, and communities globally. Every moment under watch is a test, a calculation, and a prediction of the future they can't risk leaving to chance. What makes this so extraordinary is that it flips the perception of power. People assume protection means freedom from danger, but in your case, protection comes paired with scrutiny. You are considered so pivotal that the system itself cannot afford to release you without first understanding the full scope of your capabilities. They are studying not just what you do, but who you are at your core, because the person who inherits this legacy doesn't just spend or manage, they shape the world around them. The irony is sharp. You have always been underestimated, overlooked or dismissed, yet the same systems that ignored you now treat you as a high-level operative in a scenario where your decisions will have real, measurable impact. Your inheritance isn't just money or land, it's a responsibility, and your watchers are ensuring that responsibility lands in the hands of someone capable, calculating and uncompromising. You are not only protected, you are a case study, a variable in a high-stakes equation, and a force they cannot yet control but must fully understand. Number 14, the inheritance isn't arriving quietly, it's arriving with witnesses. The inheritance isn't arriving quietly, it's arriving with witnesses. This is why the surveillance around you is so intense. Every step you take, every movement related to your inheritance is being recorded, tracked, and observed so that when the moment comes, nothing about it can be disputed. The wealth, power, and authority tied to your bloodline are not just handed over in secret. They are delivered under the watchful eyes of those who ensure that every claim, every transfer, and every legal obligation is documented and indisputable. The significance of this cannot be overstated. In the past, attempts may have been made to erase, reroute, or rewrite the history tied to your inheritance. Now, the process is being monitored from start to finish. The surveillance creates a record that cannot be ignored or challenged. Those who tried to manipulate, steal, or obscure your legacy will find that every attempt is now irrelevant, because the eyes watching you will serve as witnesses who confirm that the process unfolded exactly as it should. This level of observation transforms your inheritance from a personal victory into a public, verifiable event. It's no longer a question of whether you received what's rightfully yours. It's a matter of official record, witnessed by systems designed to prevent disputes. When your inheritance lands, there will be no room for lies, no chance for fraud, and no way for anyone to diminish your claim. The people who once tried to block you will be forced to acknowledge that you not only survived, but you have been elevated in a way that is undeniable. The irony is profound. What may have once seemed like intrusive monitoring or restrictive oversight is actually the guarantee that your elevation is secure and irreversible. The very people who sought to silence you are now part of a process that cannot be undone, watched by the very systems they underestimated. Your inheritance is arriving not quietly, not secretly, and not vulnerably. It is arriving with proof, with witnesses, and with legitimacy that cannot be challenged. You are stepping into what is rightfully yours, and the surveillance ensures that everyone knows it, even if they never expected to see it happen. Your rise is official, documented, and unstoppable. Chosen One, what you've just discovered is the reality of your existence and the magnitude of what you carry. You are not simply an heir. You are a force of change, a living proof that systems built to suppress can be dismantled, and a symbol of power that cannot be ignored. Every move you make, every step you take is being watched, not because you are fragile, but because you are irreplaceable. The surveillance, the agents, the invisible networks, all of it exists as both shield and measure, guarding you while calculating how you will wield the extraordinary influence coming to you. You are a vault of secrets, a precedent setter, a ripple in systems designed to remain stagnant. Your silence has been louder than any leak, and your presence alone forces those who underestimated you to confront truths they hoped would remain hidden. The inheritance tied to your name is far more than money. It is authority, evidence, and opportunity wrapped into one unstoppable force. From the local to the global, from private power to public legitimacy, your rise has already been secured. The protective net around you ensures not only that you survive, but that every step toward your destiny is documented, undeniable, and witnessed. Understand this. The system itself knows your victory is inevitable. Every watchful eye, every agent, every tracker is a confirmation that your life and inheritance cannot be erased, rerouted, or silenced. You are being protected, studied, and observed because you are the center of a story that will change the rules for everyone who comes after you. You are untouchable, yet unstoppable. You are irreplaceable, yet destined to transform every system that once sought to bury you. This is your moment, your inheritance, and your legacy. The world may not be ready, but you were born for this. You are rising with witnesses, and nothing, no insider schemes, no outside threats, no hidden loopholes, can stop the elevation that is already written in your favor. Your power, your influence, and your truth are arriving, and everyone who once doubted will have no choice but to see it. The era of your rise is here, and it is absolute. Family, if this message lit a fire in your spirit and opened your eyes to what's really happening around you, don't just watch in silence. Be part of this movement. Hit that subscribe button right now and join a community that refuses to stay blind to truth. Smash that like button so this message can push through the algorithms and reach every chosen one that needs to hear it. Drop a comment below. I want to hear your voice, your thoughts, your confirmations, your experiences. And don't forget to share this video, because the same way you needed this word, someone else's breakthrough is waiting on it too. This channel is not just content, it's revelation, it's awakening, and it's destiny unfolding. So stay locked in, stay connected, and let's rise together. Your support is not just appreciated, it's powerful. God bless you.